Hello, this is Cindy Shubley from the Web Seller Circle. This is part 5 of the Information Sales series. Welcome back. Last week, Danny talked a little bit about video, full motion video, and how you might want to, use that as your training tool or your information product. If you're going to use full motion video, it might not be best to use Camtasia, but rather to use Sony Movie Studio for video. Camtasia is not the best product for rendering or creating full motion videos, and I know a lot of people try to bring in their flip video movies into Camtasia and try to edit them. It's not the best way to do it. So we showed you, specifically Danny showed you how to use Sony Movie Studio for video last week. This week we're going to talk a little bit more about screencasting and using Camtasia Studio. So that's specifically what we're going to cover tonight, is about using Camtasia for screencasting. Now I want to remind everybody that we have done a full tutorial on how to use Camtasia, how to edit in Camtasia, how to bring in video, and how to use it at the Web Seller Circle. We did it as part of the presenter series earlier this year in the spring, and you can find that at www.websellercircle.com/members 359 CFM, and we talk a lot about how to maximize using screencasting or Camtasia to edit your videos. So tonight I thought what we would do is talk a little bit more about putting it together from the very beginning, and then show you a quick tutorial or demo on how I put my screencasts together to make a presentation. And again, I really strongly recommend that after you view this, you go ahead and look at that other tutorial to get some tips and more techniques about editing Camtasia. So to start off, let's talk a little bit about the hardware, what you're going to need to create this video or this tutorial. You're going to need some way to record audio or your voice. We use Samsung mics for recording. They're great. They're going to cost you anywhere from $75 to $200 or $300. You don't have to get the top of the line. Watch the sales and get yourself a mic. The most important thing to remember is that you want a USB mic, one that plugs into your USB port. Then you're going to want to get a pop filter. You may not know what the heck a pop filter is until you experience hearing a pop. You may have heard somebody doing recording and notice that when they pronounce their P's, the mic kind of pops. Well, that's what these filters are designed to prevent. So it's just essentially just a very light fabric that goes between your mouth and the microphone. And just this small piece of fabric, very thin fabric, helps get rid of those pops. And if there is nothing else you get, no other accessory you get for your microphone, this is a must-have if you're going to create a professional product. You cannot live without a pop filter because it sounds really awful if you try to record without one. Now we also use a shock mount. That's because I don't use, I put my mic on my desk. And this shock mount prevents the mic from picking up sounds that the desk makes. So if I move the desk, or if the microphone gets moved around, it doesn't pick up that sound, because these mics are very, very sensitive. They pick up everything, even motion. So what you want to do is get a shock mount, and this thing creates like a little air bubble for your microphone. So as things are moving around, your microphone is just floating in air. They're called a shock mount, and this is the spider mount that we use. There are other models, but I thought I'd show you what we use because we found that it is very effective. You're going to want a stand. Like I said, I put my microphone right on my desk, so I have just a little tiny stand that it stands on, because you're going to do screencasting, and you're going to want your hands free, so you're not going to want to hold that mic, and you're going to want to put it on a stand. Now, Danny has a different sort of stand. She has a more traditional kind of stand that is has a long arm on it, and she can stand up and record using her mic, or she can move the arm around as she sits and position the microphone. It just is a matter of your own personal taste and your own workflow. So, you're going to want to get something to put your microphone on, and it's just going to be more based on how you're comfortable working. If you would prefer to stand while you're recording, and that certainly is an alternative. In fact, there are times when I am doing broadcasts that I'm like so up in knots that it works better for me to actually stand, and I'll borrow Danny's mic stand so that I can stand up and do my broadcasts. Makes me more comfortable. However, for most of the recordings that I'm doing for DVDs and the like, I like the desk stand because it helps me just sit down and relax and kind of move myself forward. So either one, you don't have to have them both. If you have the money, it'd be great. You could have the different alternatives, but one or the other, some way to set your mic on a stand. And finally, I found a picture of kind of what it looks like all put together. Of course, we don't have the pop filter showing here, but you can see it on a mic stand, and what we've got the shock mount there as well. So the microphone is ready to record and ready for audio, except for you may notice in this picture we're missing the cord. Of course, you have to be connected to a computer via the USB cord. Another alternative is the headset. And I think this is probably, it's probably the most affordable way to record. Again, you want to get a USB headset. Now, they have them in all sorts of price ranges, and just about any headset will work, but I do want to say a few things about choosing your headset. The cheaper you go, the less comfortable it is going to be for you to wear for the very beginning. The less expensive ones have the cheap plastic. And if you're going to record, you probably want some kind of way to feedback and block other things out that's happening. In fact, right now as I'm recording this, I'm using a headset, the big muffs over my ears, so that things that are going on around me kind of are in the background and not distracting me. The other thing that I like about the headsets that we've chosen is that we do have a mute capability. So if we are doing a live broadcast, we can hit the mute button if I have to cough or the like. So there is a mute button. So it just depends on what you're going to use these headsets for. There is a whole range of them. Just kind of watch the sales, and you can pick up some really nice headset for your broadcast. And then the headset should not be, the microphone part of the headset should not be directly in front of your mouth. Now that's a common thing. You think the headset needs to be, or the mic needs to be directly in front of your mouth, but oftentimes that's way too close, because then the audience can hear you breathing, taking in those heavy breaths, and I do that a lot. I talk really fast, and I have to stop and take a breath. And if I have that mic right directly in front of my mouth, my audience can hear that as well. So you want to move the mic up a little bit and sort of out just a little bit out of the direct line of your speech, most likely the microphone will pick up your sound just fine. So it doesn't have to be directly in front of your face like we see a lot of the recording artists do. That's a very different game than what we're talking about, making an information product. So that's the hardware you need, and of course you need Camtasia. Now Camtasia is not cheap, and it is only sold by TechSmith, so there's only one place to buy it, and you can't buy an older version and upgrade. It's going to cost you probably $350 around there to buy it, but you will buy the most current version of Camtasia. And the nice thing about the most current version, of course, is that they're keeping up with web standards. But you don't have to upgrade with every incarnation of Camtasia. So now let's talk a little bit about putting it together. We've got that hardware and we've got the software. I thought what I would do is, talk a little bit about how Cindy puts together an information product. In other words, how do I start the project from the beginning, and how do I create it as we go through it to get to the point of Camtasia and recording it. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and talk to you about how the process works for me. Of course, when I decide on a subject, I try to research it as much as possible. Find out what people are asking, the main questions that they're asking, ask questions myself, read as much as I can, and then when I get to the point that I'm ready to create the product, when I did Facebook, it took me a while to get to that point where I sat down with an outline. And then I write the outline. Now, this outline is just random thoughts. What is it that I think is important to get across to my viewer? What information do they need the most? I don't try to think of the order. It's just free-flowing thoughts, everything that I want to include. And after I get my outline done, then I look at that outline, and I try to reorder things, because most likely I'm likely to think of the very last thing first. I have to be sure and include that at the end, and that'll be my first thing. So I'll have to go and reorder the outline. So this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. This is the natural order that my audience should take to master this subject. And while I'm reordering the outline, I'm also looking at how I can put these into recordable segments. Now, I try to make my segments about 3 to 5 minutes long, because when you're trying to learn something, or my audience is trying to learn something, I know that life is happening. They're watching this recording, but just as likely as they're watching this recording, the dog is asking to go out, or the kids are asking you a question, or the mailman's coming in a minute or two and you've got to get your bags out to the front door so that he can pick them up. So things happen while people are watching. So if I can put this outline or these segments into 3 to 5 minute segments, it is easier for them to come back to this segment, or they can move forward to the next segment. And so I always try to keep in mind that with my video that it's going to be into segments, so that there is a 3 to 5 minute segment on how to do something, then there is a break or a transition, and then we move on to the next segment. So that's how we design our videos when we're creating them at the Web Seller Circle or for Ghost Leg Media. Then, once I have the segment outlined or that outline done, I start recording the segments. And for me, I start at the beginning and then I move to the end. So I record it one segment at a time. So I'll decide what the segment is and then I'll start recording it. Now, I record without sound. So in other words, I'm just going to do the screencast first, and then later I'm going to come back and do the audio, and I'm going to use Audacity for the audio. So after I do the screen recording, I bring it into Camtasia and I do the major edits. I watch for things like where I want to zoom and pan or get in close and draw my viewer's attention. If there was a malfunction or I mistyped something, or when I click the load, it took 30 seconds for the page to redraw. Well, my viewers don't need to see that 30 seconds of me sitting around waiting for the screen to redraw. I can cut that out and keep the segment moving. So those kind of edits I start doing right away. Now, while I'm doing the editing, I'm also getting a vivid or more clear idea of what I want to say to go with this video. And then, after I get the major edits done, I start writing my manuscript. Now, I will sit down in Word and I will write out word for word what I want to say during the screencast. And I do it segment by segment, so it's not like I'm writing it all at once, so it's not too overwhelming. And yes, I do write it and I read it. Now, there's a couple of benefits and there's a couple of drawbacks for doing this. The benefit, in my mind, is if I do this full typed manuscript in Word, if later on I decide that I want to not only do a DVD about, let's say, this Facebook video, I've already got most of my manuscript written. I can create an ebook out of it, or I could approach my publisher and say, "Hey, would you like to do a Facebook book? I've got an outline ready, and we've got part of the manuscript ready to go. Are you interested?" So I have it already written down. So it's multi-purpose. So it's one way to keep me in writing that script. Now, there are some drawbacks to having a manuscript in front of you that you're reading, and that is it sounds like you're reading it. So it's very hard to sound animated or excited if you are just reading. And I know that you've all probably heard somebody reading a manuscript. And I'm not saying that mine are perfect, that you can't tell that I'm not reading, but I do try to read through my manuscripts a few times before I do the recording, so I do know where to sound excited or where to pick up the pace or where to be a little bit muted. So I do try to put some inflections in, but it is very hard to remember that while you're reading, that you do not just want to sound like you're reading. That kind of bores your audience. Now, the other thing that I can say here about writing a manuscript at this point is that most of the gurus are going to tell you to do just the opposite of what I've just told you. They're going to say record the audio first, then record the video. For me, it doesn't work. And again, it just depends on your workflow. I'm a more visual person. It's easier for me to get the visual part together and then write the words to it. And it works in the timing for me, and it helps me percolate my thoughts and my words while I'm doing that video. You may find that you're going to do it just the opposite, but I do recommend that if you are not comfortable speaking, that at least your very first attempt, you should take the extra time to write your manuscript so you have something to read as you go along, instead of just saying, oh, what was it I was going to say? Because very few people are really talented enough to just get this off the top of their head. So once I have my manuscript ready, now I start my recording in Audacity. And what I do is I bring up Audacity, I start reading my manuscript, but I am also watching Camtasia as the recording is going by. So I know if there is a pause that I need to take. Do I need to stop here while I'm typing in something? Do I need to speed up my speech? Do I need to be excited? Do I need to slow down? So I can watch as the video's rolling by, as I'm speaking, so I can get a clue about where I am while I'm reading by looking at the recorder. If I'm talking away and I stumble over a word in a sentence and I just mangle something, I can just stop. I don't have to stop the Audacity recording. I can just physically stop myself, let the recording continue on, and not to worry about that. Maybe I'll pause the video. I'll take a deep breath and, get my composure back together, and then start at the very beginning of the sentence again and go back through that. Later on, after I've finished the recording, then I can go back and cut out that mangled sentence. So I don't have to start over every time I make a mistake. At first, that's what I kind of thought I had to do. I was, oh no, I'm halfway through this 3-minute thing and I've made this mess. Now I have to start over from the beginning. But you don't have to. With Audacity, you can just simply cut it out later on. That's one of the benefits of using an editor like Audacity for your audio. Now, with Audacity, of course, when you get the raw recording done, you're going to want to save it. But when you save it, you're going to save it or export it as a WAV file. So it's export as WAV, and then when you bring it into Camtasia, it's importing the WAV file and putting it onto the timeline in Camtasia. So export as WAV in Audacity, import as WAV into the timeline. Now, I'm going to do a demo of how I put a section together here for you. And just to remind you that after we see this, you may want to go back to that presenter series, Part 8. Danny did an excellent job of talking about how to render your recording depending on how the final product is going to be. If you're going to put it on a data CD or a DVD, you want to do the final, what it's called rendering or saving as part of the video. You want to render it in a certain file format, and we talked about that in Part 8 of the presenter series. So as a follow-up, you're going to want to watch that as well, and that's www.websellercircle.com/members/362CFM. So do watch that. This presenter series we did in the spring really does tie in with this series as well. So do go refer to at least those 2 videos. Now, if you'll give me just a second, I'm going to pull up my stuff and show you a demo. I'm going to start this at the phase that I've already done the outline. And now I want to record a segment. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is get my tabs ready for the recording. So before I start the recording, I go to wherever it is that I'm going to record. And for this demo, I'm just going to do a quick how to do an Aweber form and put it into a WordPress blog. So I've got my Aweber form up here. So this is where we're going to start the video at, and then we're going to transition after we make this web form. We're going to transition it over to the WordPress blog. So I'm going to have these 2 tabs up. When I do my recording, I like to put it in the aspect ratio of 1024 by 768. So I'm just going to resize my Explorer window to that size, 1024 by 768. And now I have my Explorer window sized to what I want. So I've got the desktop size or the Explorer windows sized to where I want them. Now I want to bring up my Camtasia. I'm going to reduce this really quickly, and I'm going to find my Camtasia, and we're using 5 for this demo. So I'm going to double click on it to turn it on, and a dialog box pops up. Now again, I'm going to start a new screen recording. But I do want to point out that if you are working on projects, they will show up here, your most recent projects. You can record from a PowerPoint, or you can do a voice recording. Camtasia isn't that great at it. I would use Audacity. And there's tutorials. There's tons of tutorials on every part of Camtasia. So if you get stuck on, how to do a call out, if it just doesn't make sense to you how I explained it in that video, you can see a tutorial on it. And you can find them by, looking at this pop-up box, or if you're in Camtasia itself in the editor, you can go to Help. It's a drop-down menu. And it will bring up a dialog box where you can navigate to any question you may have. And they have live action Camtasia videos on how to access this information or to use it. So I'm going to start a new screen recording. And a dialog box pops up. We see we've got a dialog box pops up here. It says, if I check this, it would record using the microphone, but again, I'm going to record later, so I don't want to record the sound. I do want to select the area to record, so I'm going to move my recorder down a little bit here and bring my Internet Explorer back up, and I'll bring this back to the foreground for you. And I'm going to select an area to record. So I click on Select Area, and you see how I've got kind of a cross piece here, and notice how this changes colors. The red outline is telling me what exactly is the area it's choosing. So I can just choose this window here, or I can move it up a little bit. So I can choose any area that I want to record. I'm just going to move it so that it's outlining the whole Internet Explorer pane, and click. And now it's telling me this is the area I'm going to record. Notice that there are handles here where I can move it in and out if I didn't get it right. Now, once I start recording, it's F9 to start or F10 to stop if you are a keyboard person, or you can use this record. So I'm going to click on record, and we're just going to go ahead and start recording this demo and see how it goes. So now I'm recording it. And you'll see that I see down here at the very bottom, it may be hard for you to see, but down here at the bottom it's giving me some time. This is how long the time recording is elapsing. There's also some other information. There's pause, there's stop or F10, and there's delete. So there are commands down here at the bottom, but I am recording, so I can go ahead and get started. Now generally when I'm recording, I know that I usually introduce my videos, and so what I'll do is I'll pause 10 seconds or so before I actually start moving my mouse around. So that gives me a 10-second overlap if I'm going on in my introductions. Sometimes it works. Half the time I cut it out, but it's always good to have a little extra time to talk over than it is to try to fit something in the timeline later on. Now, what I want to do is be very aware that the way you mouse is the way people follow. So this mouse movement has to be very smooth and slow. So do remember that people are watching as you're moving this mouse around. None of this stuff that goes like this, oh wait, I forgot where I'm going. So if that's going to happen to you, what you should do is practice this first before you actually do the recording. All right, so now I'm going to give you a kind of a 2-in-1 here. We're going to create this how-to video inside a how-to video. So I'm going to create a form inside of Aweber. So I click on Create Form. Now, in the video, I might say something about here are your different tabs, and what we want to get to is the Web Form tab. Once we get to the Web Form tab, you will notice that there is the Create Form button, and then I'll click on the Create Form button. Now remember, I may be talking now, but I am not recording the audio, so I may be just practicing, but the audio is not being recorded with the Camtasia. Now it is loading. Now, it took a while for it to load. I probably don't want all of that time in there, so I can shorten that up later in the editor as well. So now we're here at the at the templates. I'm just going to close this. We're at the templates, and I can just pick a template that I want to use. And by all these different templates, there's a number of different templates. Let me just grab the garden one here, and it asks me what color, form I want to use, and I'm just going to accept the default iris, and I'm going to load the template. And now we've got the template. Now, for a demo, I'd probably go into how you could edit the header and resize it and all that stuff. But let's just keep this demo moving along for you all. So now I'm going to go to step 2. Now, what am I going to name this form? Well, I'm going to name it test form for demo. So later on, when I come back into my Aweber, I know I can just delete this. And then I am going to save the web form. So I'm going to click on the web form. And it probably is good for you to talk as you are actually doing this so that you can get the timing about what you're going to say in the future. So you're pausing at these buttons or these functions later on. So now I'm going to go to step 3, and I'm going to click on it. Now I know that in my publication or when I do the audio, I'm probably going to want to explain why I'm going to use or what the proper use of these 3 functions are. So I may do something like, go and mouse over this one and just hover there for 5 or 6 seconds, and then move down and hover over this one for 5 or 6 seconds, and then move down and hover over this one for 5 or 6 seconds, just to give some time for me to explain it later on when I'm doing my Audacity audio. And then I go up here to what I actually want. And then, of course, there's 2 tabs that I'm going to explain. So I'm going to hover over this one for a second and then this one for a second as well. Maybe click on it just so that people can see a visual of what I'm doing. Now, for this demo, I'm going to use the JavaScript. So I'm just going to highlight that. And whenever possible, if there is a visual command that I can use as opposed to a keyboard command, what I might use in everyday usage, I will use the visual command. So in this case, I would right-click to copy the JavaScript. Now, naturally for me, I would rather use Control-C, but you can't see that on a video. So I'm right-clicking and copying. Now, I've got that in place. So what I want to do next is come over to my dashboard on my blog. Now this is the dashboard, and then I might want to say a thing or two about the dashboard, but what I want to do is actually come down here to Appearance and click on Appearance and pick the widgets and click on that. Now, I am trying my very best not to mouse around a lot. I'm trying to be very stable with my mousing because I'm trying to do a demo. So now I'm going to, talk a little bit about how you need to look for the text module, because if you're going to install an Aweber form, you need the text module. So I'll hover over this. And you see how I can grab it with my mouse. Now, there's no visual way to really explain this, so I would, in the Audacity explanation, I will have to explain how you just grab your mouse, with your left click, hold it, and drag it up to where you want to place it. And so now I'm dragging it, and I want to put it at the wide widget top sidebar. And I want to hover over it and try to get it to drop into that sidebar. So if I release it, it should have dropped it in. But it didn't this time. So it didn't work out. Guess what? In the finished video, you're not, unless it's important to state that and let people know that that will happen from time to time, or if it's just a Cindy mistake, it depends, but if it's just a Cindy mistake and it's a time waster, it's going to get cut out. So I don't worry too much about it. Come back up here. Let's try it again. So in this case, it looked like I needed to have the sidebar actually clicked and open to make that work. So I may either explain it later on and not go through both steps, or I may show my mistakes so other people understand that they may be making the same mistake. So now I'm going to type in a title and then type in newsletter sign up. Oops, spelled it wrong. Now all of that stuff you don't have to get too worked up about, because in the editing you can cut that out and just, in fact, most of the time when I am editing a video, I will edit out a lot of that typing, because people don't need to watch you type anymore. They're time starved, so they just want to get the idea. So I may show the first couple of letters being typed in and then just flow it to the last one, and it looks fairly smooth, and people don't feel like, oh brother, Cindy is the slowest typer in the universe. Now I'm going to paste in that Java, so I'm going to right click and click and paste, and there's our Java, and I want to save it. Now it's saved, and if it's all worked right, I can go to my blog, scroll up and go to my blog, and there it is. The newsletter sign-up form is on the blog. So that is how to, install a newsletter sign-up box on a WordPress blog. And now, again, I'm probably going to leave like 30 seconds at the end because I may want to wrap it up. So I'm just going to leave the recording going for another 30 seconds or so. I can cut it out later on if it's too much, but I'm just giving myself some extra space. And then I can come down here to my different buttons here and stop the recording. Now here it popped into a review. I don't know if you can really see that clearly, but now what was happening is it is reviewing. Do I want to save this? And you'll see it says save or delete. Yeah, if I really messed it up, I might want to delete and start over. But this is just fine. So this is what I want. So I'm going to click save. And it's going to ask me, where do I want to save it? And I'm going to save it into my documents and my videos. And I'm going to save it as video demo. And this is going to save that recording as a camrec file, or the recording file. So this is going to be the raw file, and save it. Finally, when it's done saving it, a dialog box pops up that says, do you want to edit your recording, create another recording? Again, I'm just doing one segment at a time. Now, another nice thing about doing one segment at a time is that I can watch the time it's taking. I try to keep my goal for my videos, my DVDs and the like, or the CDs, are to keep them around an hour. I normally go over a little bit, but if I do one segment at a time, I can watch what the time is looking like. So if I have to cut out, or if I have too much information I have to cut out, I can tell you that if I do all the recordings at once and then come back and do all that work at once, it's much harder for me to cut that out. So as I do one segment at a time, it's beneficial for me in that it's easier to let something go that may not be that important and may just be a time waster for my audience. So one segment at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into edit my recording. And again, another dialog box pops up, and it asks you to, do you want the web dimensions here at 640 by 480, and do you want to apply smart focus? In other words, the zoom and pan is automatically going to follow your mouse. And I've seen these kind of videos, and they look kind of, oh gosh, especially if the person is not mousing smoothly, it can make you feel kind of seasick or dizzy trying to follow that mouse. And I prefer to put in my own zoom and pans. I'm a little bit of a control freak when I'm doing this because I know what I want to point out. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be every mouse movement. So I will go ahead and not take the default. I'm going to go to change the video dimensions and then click on OK. Now I have the video on the timeline here. You see there's the video, or the camera recording file is up in the clip bin. And again, I go into detail about all these different functions in that video on the presenter series. So I really recommend, after you're done viewing this, to go see that video. But really quickly, there's the clip bin, here's the video, and I can start editing it. As I turn it on, you can see that it is moving across the timeline. You see our timeline is moving here, and it is showing you what's going on. Now maybe I don't need all of that time that we spent in the very beginning introducing the Aweber part. So I can just, let's move it up a little bit to where I actually started mousing over these different parts here, right about here. So I'm going to cut that much out. So I just go to grab my mouse and highlight the segment that I want to cut out, and I look for the scissors section, and it cuts it out. It's cut it out, and I can review it now and see if I like it. And again, if I don't like it, I can just go up to Edit and Undo. So any edit you make, you can undo it if you made a mistake. If you cut too much, you cut too little. Now you notice also in the new version of Camtasia, you can actually split the audio track away from the video track. But in the older version, in the version we're using, we have audio 1 here. It is still attached to it. Well, I'm not going to, there's no sound there, so I don't need this track showing and, more memory being taken by a kind of a ghost track here. So I'm just going to go up to where it says Tracks, and I'm going to uncheck track 1. Now I am going to go into Audacity and create a sound file. So I'm going to put that sound file on audio track 2. So now I've got audio track 2 here. Again, once I'm done going through and doing my edits, the next step will be, now I'm going to write my manuscript. And then I'm going to practice saying that manuscript a few times. So if it's going to be a product that I'm selling, you can see that I'm putting a fair amount of time into each and every one of these segments. I might not put that much work into a YouTube video and show somebody how to put an Aweber form into a WordPress blog. I may just let the ums and ahs and the way I stumble over my speech just stay, because we want to get it out, we want to get it done, we don't want to spend that much time. So it depends on the purpose of your final product, again, how much polishing and how much time and how much work you're going to put into it. So for tonight, to keep the ball rolling, I'm going to go right into Audacity and show you really quickly how Audacity works. So Audacity is a free program, and here is Audacity. There are some buttons across here. These are your record buttons. This big red one indicates recording. This is pause, and this is I'm done with the recording. The first thing you should do is to run a sound check before you just jump into recording, because if the levels are off, you can get those artificial pops and hums and weird sounds in your recording. And they do end up on the final product. But there is some level adjustments here. The one that you probably want to pay most attention to is when you see these levels really bounce up. here, you can change the levels by changing this input volume down a little bit, physically using this slider. So I'm going to turn on this and record. Now this recording is a little bit, it's a little bit heavy. You see all this, that it's coming out to the top here. That's telling me that I'm way too loud and I'm going to get those pops. So I can move the input level down as I'm talking. Now you see the peaks and valleys are much lower, and that's going to give a better quality sound. So you want to do your sound check, and once you have your sound check done, then you can start the recording. Now, the one thing I have learned about these recordings is that you have to be prepared to start and end at the same time. So you can't. The equipment isn't sophisticated enough to do like half the part. You know, let's say I only have time to. It's a 5-minute segment, and I only have time to record 2.5 minutes of it, and then I'll come back later on and record the other 2.5 minutes. Well, you can't mix it right. We don't have that sophisticated equipment, and you can hear the difference. It can be very major in some points, and it can be very minor in others. But I recommend that when you are ready to record, you just sit down and record from beginning to end that segment. Don't try to do part of it and then come back later. Even though the mic hasn't moved and you haven't touched anything, just the magic of recording, things change. And actually your voice changes and your cadence changes as well, depending on your mood. And you want that cadence to be fairly steady, at least through the segments. So do keep that in mind. The other thing is here, this is just one track here. And this one track is what's referred to as mono. Well, a lot of people who are listening in using 2 speakers can hear in stereo. So you want the very best quality you can provide them. So you do want to change your audio track. And this is when you get Audacity, it's just set up to record mono. So you do want to change it to record in stereo. So I'm going to close this because I don't want to keep it. So I'm just going to close it. And I'm going to go up to Edit, Preferences. It's under Audio I/O. So it's the first tab. And you see where it says Channels, 1 mono. We want to change it to 2 stereo and click OK. And now when we record, it's going to record in stereo. So I'm just going to record a real quick piece here. This is recording in stereo, and you can actually see there's 2 tracks here. And again, we may be, we're way up there again. It's really recording me blasting out. Notice that because I closed it, we're back up to this input being way high. So I'm going to use the slider bar to bring this down some. And that should help alleviate some of those hums. Now, as I'm recording, I usually, again, read the script and I have the video showing. So I'm watching and I'm reading it along, and if I make a mistake, again, I just take a deep breath. I don't turn my Audacity off. I just let the mistake stay for a bit, but I do give it a break. So I'll just take a deep breath and not say anything. Once I'm composed again, I'll start the sentence over. And now you can see how we've got this block here where I know that I've made a mistake. And when I come back to this to edit it, I can find these breaks here, and I can kind of know that I can cut this out. Maybe this sentence started up here. Now, I'm just cutting this to show you as a demo. You actually have to listen. So one of the things that we're not getting here is that you do listen to the recording. But I'm just showing you really quickly how Audacity works tonight. So then I would go up to Edit, and I would cut. Now, if I didn't cut correctly, I could undo this edit. and try again. So, little ums and so's and ha's and ums and ahs and things like that can be very easily edited out in Audacity. Of course, you have to listen to the recording, and that's, you're just seeing the visual part tonight, but you listen and you can see it. Now, what happens if you look at this recording, you see these peaks and valleys, and this gives you the visual clue to know when to cut. Here, it's a word between here and here. The next word, and then the next word, and this is a whole sentence. So you can kind of see the sentence or the speech structure by looking at these lines. But here, it was probably a little, tick of my speech right in there. I may have said or made a little sound that doesn't need to be there, or it's a breath. It's just a little tiny thing. I could cut that out. Just cut it. And again, I would want to listen to it first before I cut it out. But that is simply how you use Audacity. Once you have it all edited, if you've kind of watched as you're talking and matched it to the video, you should be darn close now with your audio matching your video length. But you're going to have to do some final editing. So before anything, after you get that raw file, Audacity file recorded, you want to hit save and save it. So if anything happens, like computers are known to crash while you're trying to edit Audacity, so you don't lose all those edits. So you do want to save, just like any other file that you're working on. These files are big and they use up a lot of memory and computer power, and they are much more likely to crash your computer, especially an older, lower power one. So you want to save a lot. But when you're finally done with the project, you've got it all polished up, you're ready to match it with Camtasia, you want to export it as a wave. So I'm going to export it as a wave, and I'm going to put it into my videos, and I'm going to call it video demo. And I usually write audio behind it, but you don't really actually have to. Depends on your workflow, how you're comfortable naming your files. But sometimes I just don't see that it's a WAV file, but I can read that it's a WAV file. So I usually say video demo audio and save. And now I'm going to close Audacity. I've already saved the changes, so I don't need to save them again. And I'm going to bring back up Camtasia, and I'm going to import that media to my videos, video, audio, wave, and I'm going to open. So now I've got the audio in my clip bin. I'm ready to move my audio, and I just grab that audio, click on it to highlight it, and I move it down to my audio 2 track. Now obviously this doesn't quite fit because it's just a demo, but you can see now that the audio is there, and you can start matching up the pieces together. Now I usually have to do a few more edits to finalize and match up the audio to the video, but it's not much. It's just a little here and a little there, and it's just sort of finishing touches. Now do remember, like if there's a space in the video that your screen is redrawing, and with the audio you just talked over that, so your video is now behind your audio. That's okay. You can just lock the audio and go to the video, and it's unlocked, and let's say, oh gosh, I have to cut out this chunk here to match the audio, then you can do it, and it doesn't cut the audio, or vice versa. So you can unlock and lock these tracks to match up the audio and the video as you finish up. So that's how you can match these up a little bit, polishing them up at the end. Now the nice thing about screencasts is that you're not trying to match words and mouse together, so you don't have to synchronize everything perfectly. If you're a little out of sync, most of the time people don't notice unless you're moving from screen to screen really rapidly and you're trying to keep up. But for the most part, you know, if you're not exactly in sync, nobody's going to know the difference. And then, of course, to polish this up, we'd want to put in those transitions, the intro and the outro, and then a little bit of music here and there to finally make it a final product. Once I had this segment done, then I would start on the next segment. So that's sort of how I create a screencast and how I create my products when I'm making a product. Next week, what we're going to do to wrap this up is we're going to talk about the mysterious Kanaki. Now, Kanaki is going to be your best value for getting these CDs and DVDs pressed. They are very economical. It makes it very affordable for you to create these CDs and sell them. Even if you don't want to sell them, you want to use them as promotions. So it is very, very economical. But the downside of Kanaki is there is absolutely no instructions on the site. It's just you have to figure it out. It's not intuitive at all. So next week, Danny and I are going to try to tackle how to take this product into Kanaki and get that information uploaded to Kanaki and get that CD in your midst so you can sell it. I appreciate you all being here, and I will see you again next week. That's it from the Web Seller Circle.